So that's not really a substantive change. And then I was asked also if we could move the agenda around tonight and get presentations in early. I know there's some time commitments. So if it's okay, we'll put presentations in, and I have 3 of those in order, and then we'll do public remarks right after that. The presentations, I'm not expecting any board vote on anything tonight, so it really shouldn't be anything that's that significant.
I see head nods. I think we're good on that.
Okay.
Well, I guess a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll motion.
Second.
Treasurer.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Okay, I'll jump right into presentations here. The first 2, actually all 3 of them won't take that long, but can we put up the summer 2024 credit content recovery student progress? While they're getting ready to publish that, we will ask members of our curriculum committee, so it'll be Mrs. Thomas and Mrs. Davis, to review this more thoroughly, but I wanted to do a high-level overview of what we did this summer. Okay. So I'll start at each building. So we had 69 students and 15 staff members who participated at the elementary school. We provided 20 hours of instruction on reading and math. 5 of our 3rd graders received a passing score on the 3rd grade reading test. And as a reminder, there's multiple ways you can get there. There's a couple different assessment ways, and there's even a parent promotion way. But we had 5 students who were able to be promoted based on their state testing. And then we had 3 students who had an alternate assessment, so there's summer promotion. And then we had also this was a non-test area, but just in kindergarten, we identified some students who could use some readiness assessments. We have 40 students there. I will tell you, and it's early in the assessment process from looking at last year, including the state data. I'll lightly touch on that tonight, but we'll have more for you in October. But this we're solid on. Our highest level of proficiency after summer intervention for 3rd grade reading was this year. So we're happy for that. And happy for our veteran administrative team, including Mrs. Wagner there at the elementary school, for helping with that. So any questions about the elementary school? And again, we'll go over this in more depth. Yeah, and we'll dig in a little deeper. Some of this data is just coming to fruition, including the state data. Intermediate school, we didn't have as tested areas there, but we had 15 students and 2 staff members who participated. They received 15 hours of instruction. We focused just in reading and math. We focus on power standards, or those higher levels that are required. They used an Olympic theme, which you can see there. And then we focused on number sense, place value, and word problems just in the area of math. So again, we'll go in that more in depth. Any questions about the intermediate? Middle school, also some non-tested areas there too in terms of state proficiency requirements for this purpose. We had 16 students participated. We had 60 hours of instruction, and this is focused on math and science. We talk about Project Lead the Way and some of our STEAM activities, so a lot of this is embedded in project-based learning. We looked at some building systems and how chips are made. Obviously, that's something relevant to what we're talking about in the area. And then we also had some focus on robotics, which is an area of focus for the school district, especially as we grow into the high school robotics program this year. And then they also built a robotic arm as a culminating project. Any questions about the middle school? Okay. High school, this is an area where we did have some competency that we were trying to achieve. We had 18 students participate, and of those 18 students, we were able to recover what we call credit recovery, 10.5 credits. So that really helps students toward graduation. That's significant. And within that, we had 60 hours of instruction, again, focused on credit recovery, also through project-based learning. So we'll dig a little deeper in this in curriculum, as I said before. But questions or anything I can answer for the?
No, I think that's a good general overview. I know Anna and I were really impressed last year that the team was looking at the data early enough in the year to try to put systems in place around February, which we thought was great. You know, the earlier in the year you can do it. So I thought that was really great. So I think this will help us as we're looking towards next summer, looking at, you know, who and what we need to target.
I totally agree with that, and it was exciting to hear that they had already started looking at it before we had even come to the curriculum committee meeting. And the other thing, to see that the high school students have the opportunity to do the curriculum recovery is a good point. Like to see it higher. I don't know if there's an attendance issue or if there's still, I don't know, but it
Yeah.
would be interesting to see from that standpoint. Was it 18? I forget.
Yeah.
It was 18, so but 10 and a
18,
half
and so
hours.
only
So
had 10
yeah,
and a half
yeah.
hours, so that tells me not everybody that attended was able to.
Well, some of
recover
it comes in half hours though too. Like we have some back end data that we didn't. So
Oh,
it could be
okay.
like a half
yeah.
a credit here, so they're
I
short.
forgot
So
about that.
yeah. So I believe everyone did make progress, but we'll dig in a little deeper. Some of that we
That makes
keep
sense.
more educationally,
Sure.
But yeah, and I think it's the good thing is we went into this with the end in mind, so we started already thinking about what improvements we can make for summer 2025. So, okay, good. If there's no other questions, then we'll get to student enrollment.
No,
And
I was going to say one
We'll
thing
get-
I'd like to add as we're looking in October. I'd love if we could like think about, were there any barriers we were experiencing to getting students there? You know, what can we put in place to kind of help, whether it was transportation or just even getting the information out sooner to parents, just to get, like you said, better attendance for next year.
okay, let me get some notes here. Okay, anything else? Next, we want to go into and show you a little bit of our enrollment data. And it's hard to see, so we broke it into 2 slides. It'll be a little easier to see that way. We start with the one that has the active, start with the building level, please. Can't be blown up at all. A little bit more. Okay, that's fine.
Disappeared.
It was there.
It was.
There it is.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So just to put some perspective, we'll have another slide so it's a little easier to see the next bit of data. If you look at the graph that's there, if you go where it says total, which is the third line from the bottom or fourth if you count the space, and you go over, our current enrollment is 1622. And on the next slide, I'll show you it's about 100 students more than that. But these are actually students who are actually in district, and I'll show you how the other approximate 100 set. If you look, you can see our class sizes there. If you go right down, our smallest class size would be the high school, or I'm sorry, the 12th grade at 90 students. The bracketing to the right of that shows the student enrollment by building. So you can see the JES is 489, 274 for JIS, 405 for the middle school, and 454 for the high school. And then at the bottom, that bottom table, if you will, that shows our data as of we ended last school year. So if you go all the way to the right, so you see as of, well, slightly afterwards when we reconciled, but it'd be June 3rd, 2024, you can see our enrollment was 1604. So and then you could see where we were last year at this time, right about this time, 1619. So with enrollment in general, it takes a little bit of time to reconcile. Sometimes people move, and that's not represented in the data, so our numbers may be slightly inflated. Although I think this is pretty solid this year. We've been much more vigilant on our student records, and families have been as well. So we see a slight increase in numbers here. The other thing I'll tell you, and we're again studying all this, is we are seeing a growth in English language learners, pretty much a significant growth, primarily in Spanish this year. So we're seeing a little bit more impact there. And we started to see this last year, a little more transient behavior for people in and out of the district. That won't be recognized in the holistic numbers there, but more students in and out. I think we're right at the cusp now where I think you're going to start to see the enrollment increase. If you just factor in the 1604, based on where we are currently at 1622, you can see there's an increase there. Again, compared to last year, it doesn't look that significant, but I can see, who's enrolling, who's coming, who's in the queue still, and I think you're going to see more and more enrollment. The thing that has, the last couple of years, we've noticed is so many homes have been demolished, and even with the new development off of Bigelow and all back there, it's about keeping pace. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen a huge turnover existing homes. Sometimes your empty nesters will sell. So far, it's been status quo, but I think we're just at that tipping point right now, and I have to say it's more of a feeling than it is, or it's just kind of the optics, I would say, more than it is the actual data. But it's interesting. So this is something we watch, and we try to give the board an update every month. So, any questions about that data before I go to the next page? So this is the other half. We just split it in so you could look at it. So we have students in different locations, or some students who aren't attending the school district, they choose to attend others. But you can see our CTEC numbers are up. So we have 38 there. I'm sorry, in the same process here. So if you go to the four space or the bottom there that says total, so we have 38 students in CTEC. We have some open enrolled students. You can see just a few. Remember, we're decreasing that at our high school. We have some other enrollment options we have. So we have 41 students who are receiving education elsewhere. And then the total number of students we're serving in the district right now is 707. So what's interesting is you look and you see we're down there. We're actually up in the other area. Because if you follow the process, it's the same thing there. We anchored in June 3rd, you can see, and we had 17, 18 there. And then as of last year, about this time, 1724. So more students, actually in the district, I guess I would say, compared to what you see out of the district. So, questions about that? So it's just something ongoing, but I think it's interesting, and we keep watching this. Obviously, we're watching this data all the time because we update it monthly for the board, but this impacts our staffing, building needs, future growth. So we'll continue to watch this. Okay. If there's no questions, then we can jump to the last presentation. I think those are 12, but those are the students actually who are in Newark, actually. Yeah. That's actually, I was sitting there thinking, you look at this data and I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. I think the students who are here for electrical trades and all aren't counted in. I think they're counted in our seats now. We're going to have to look at that.
It looks a little down, and I don't think it's down.
In electrical trades, we have 16. Yeah, I think it's in. I think that number has shifted, Mrs. Thomas, into our.
Maybe we should have another column that says 16. Or this says on-site.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's funny because you study it. No, I
No.
think it's helpful because you study these things, and then when it's live, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. You kind of look at it more fresh. No, because actually our career tech numbers are up this year, especially because we're hosting between the multi-skilled technician and with the electrical trades. Yeah. So I think you're right. We probably should add a column in there. We can start it this year for who's actually on site and make sure that they're still classified under CTEC. Okay. All right. No other questions? Let's jump to our last presentation real quick. On this, wanted to talk just for a minute about Greater Johnstown Parks and Rec because there's been a proposal. There's nothing that the board needs to do. Right? There's been some discussion, and I just want the board to start thinking about. Well, I know you're thinking about it, but think about some possible changes. And again, no vote needed tonight. But there's been some discussion, and primarily it's focused around what is the actual partnership partnership. And as a reminder, the acronyms there, Johnstown-Monroe Local School District, and then we have the City of Johnstown that actually is a partner in this as well as the Greater Johnstown Parks and Rec District. So one of the concerns as we've been talking about the partnership as it is right now is having a 10-year limit. And then, can the Greater Johnstown go out and levy, and that would be hard in 10 years. And I think we only have about 7 years left of that original agreement. So there's been some discussion around if we should expand that to 30 years. And that's being discussed now. Obviously, we have to continue to work with the Greater Johnstown Parks and Rec District and the city in this. If we were to make any changes, I'll just jump ahead. This won't be overnight, and this has to go all the way to the state, and they have to prove that as well too. So, one of the things that another thing that we've talked about through this process is that we would have a joint meeting of the three parties. So that would be led by the Greater Johnstown, and then with the city and the school district. And we try to do that by November 30th every year, and then we celebrate the year that it just finished, as well as thinking about future goals or talking about future goals and objectives. So, any questions about that? Okay. Funding and ballot, kind of shifting gears here. So one of the things we talk about with this is we want to make sure that we have a schedule to know when public agencies are going on the ballot or when they could go on the ballot. So obviously this is something we coordinate with the city when we had our school levies back, a year or so ago. And then we want to also work on that with the Greater Johnstown as well too. So any proposal that goes forward would minimally have to be 14 days to the notification to the mayor of Johnstown, and then also the board president. And then we talked about a first reading or vote of that as well too. So it would be, like many things, you want to have a little time in between, let it, be consumable and reviewed. So any funding proposal require 2 separate readings and votes with a minimum of 30 days between. So, should be anything that's of an emergency status that we would have to get done. So, any questions about that? Okay, good. Right now we have a 5-person board for trustees. If there's ever concern, this is something, through experience we've learned, is to make sure we have the language a little tighter. So the school appoints 2, the city appoints 2, and then the 4 members elect their 5th. Trustees. So in this case, what we talked about here was if there's any concerns that the Board of Education could meet and then, discontinue the appointment of one of their appointees to this 5-person board, or the city could do the same. Any questions about that? Okay. Some discussion, obviously a lot of discussion around with the city, the schools, and the Greater Johnstown about consolidating our land oversight of recreation. So it's something we need to continue to focus on. Obviously land's at a premium, athletic space is a premium. I know we're stretched in many areas. I know that, through our dealings, the Greater Johnstown's going to look at Belt Park, figure out what the best long-term is there. And I know there's some discussion with JYAA on that as well too. So any questions there? Okay. One of the things we still have to do is we have a vacancy still. And last time we posted, I believe in March, I think I sent you all a copy of what we did back in March. So if you could look that over, and if you have any suggestions. The process worked well last time. I think it was very descriptive. And then Mrs. Brewer, I think it was you and Mr. Swagger, maybe was, yeah. And we led that committee, and then we had the appointment of Frank Sia. And so we'll look at that next. But, this is work in progress, and there's a lot of entities involved. But any comments, questions from the board?
Nope.
So I think what you can expect is, let this continue to percolate, and then what we'll do is we'll want to have some formal action and work with our partners in the city and Greater Johnstown. Okay. We got through our presentations early, or fast before 5:30. I think that was the objective. So that's all I have for presentations.
Great. So public remarks, we have Monica. Please.
Hey. Good evening. Thank you guys all for your time today.
My name is Monica Gernert, and I'm actually the president of the Johnstown Youth Athletic Association, and wanted to talk today a little bit about the youth sports as they impact the school, as well as a little bit of that last subject on the Park District. So I've been a board member for the Youth League since 2019, and I actually have a sophomore at Johnstown High School. So she's kind of aged out and gone through the Youth League programs over time. We currently have a fantastic and functioning full board of 9 members, which is like a record. Although we can always use more people as we continue to age folks out and people spend their time. We currently serve 13 sports, and I actually have some handouts with our counts over time so you can see what they look like. Back in 2021, we added wrestling. Club wrestling came in. We've added cross country. 2022, we got the Johnstown track program was added. I think it was called the Johnstown Running Club. 2023, we actually had to cap some enrollment for basketball due to facility shortages. Baseball added fall teams and winter conditioning. Softball added 14U softball. 2024, soccer introduced club level soccer to give a little bit more competitive offering. Softball added 6U, so took some of our T-ball participants and turned them into softballers early. We've also added rec select into softball. Baseball this year added a travel 11U team and a fall 14U team to serve kids that are aging out of the youth program but are still interested in baseball. Cheers added a competitive cheer track. I think they'll have 5 competitions they'll do. Golf and lacrosse were introduced this year, and basketball will now be offering an elite basketball for 5th and 6th graders, which will be formerly kind of like JSS. So all in all, we still have the same number of students. We're just offering them a lot more programs. We're still largely serving the Johnstown-Monroe School District, and we're up about 7% in our registrations per year. But as you guys know, now I'm preaching to the choir here, is we're all out of space. And a lot of our sports that are actually growing are ones that require flat grass, like flag football, soccer, club soccer, all of those. And as your facilities grow, because we depend highly on your facilities in order to offer our programs, you're going to need your grass too. And maybe we're not going to have as much space on that grass. So what I wanted to really talk to you about was about the Park District and just the support that we really need for the Park District so we can continue to offer these sports to the kids who are ultimately a feeder for the school. We are trying to provide them better and better offerings, more practices, giving you more competitive athletes. But with that, we really need that space, similar to how the New Albany and Granville run, because I believe both of those are within the school district bounds as well. And I think it makes for a really good partnership on the land, just in making sure that we're serving your needs, or the Park District is serving your needs.
30 seconds.
So that was pretty much it. The Youth League would just, appreciate any long-term voting of the Park District in, because we feel like that's the start of us being able to continue to serve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we also have Ken Duffer.
If you want to, you can speak. I have it on the agenda tonight. The board has all seen a copy of it. So, okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we're ready for board committees then. We'll start with buildings, grounds, and safety.
We did meet on September 4th. We also did a tour of JIS. They were installing the cabinets and the electric at that time for the media center. They're beautiful cabinets. It's going to look very nice in there. Very excited to see that project come together. They may be further now. They may have completed the electric. They were working pretty hard on that. So, the other things that we talked about were just a contract coming up with Harvard. We'd be looking at next year. Not Harvard, but just their contract comes up. We'll be putting out for bid for that. And we talked about some of the maintenance areas that maybe we need to look at further, like our gutters was one thing that came up, and we talked about that in our work session as well. Some of our areas may not be working the way we thought they were. And, Dave Jenny said that it was also an opportunity to go ahead and look at some of the trees, and we did some tree trimming. So overall, I think we're going to take another, Mrs. Bourne and I will probably take another walk through with Dr. Wagner and Dave Jenny and just look at some things and see where we can improve.
Do you want me to give a quick update about the electrical?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That'd be
So
great.
it actually is all in right now. The only thing is some of the raceway's a little tall, and there was supposed to be a very small gap between the top, so they're going to have to move it down on the one section. And then that standing area isn't quite in on that one corner yet, but the rest of the cabinets are standing though, and our guys, our maintenance guys, are the ones who did the work. You know, if anyone
look
ever
very
has
nice.
installed cabinets, those are difficult because you have the horizontal and vertical. I mean, it's not easy. And when you're on a cement floor, it's not even, of course, but they did an outstanding job. Seams look good. So that really looks nice for such a,
That wasn't all done. We saw they have them in there ready to
Yeah.
go and away from the wall just a little bit.
yeah, they're stationary now, so they got to move the one raceway down. But I'll tell you, it's impressive to see. I think how to explain this, but it's just there's such an economy of space for such a small area. If that makes sense. I mean, the cabinets really open up a lot there. So, and then we'll be able to finally install all of our steam equipment that we received from the grant monies from Meta Facebook
Yay.
last year, and then we can work on training and also I didn't mean to steal thunder there, but that was
What kind
well
of
done.
steam items are they going to be able to do there? Similar to what we've seen at the other
Yeah.
schools? I
They-
was asked
so-
that by
yeah,
somebody in the community. I
we-
wasn't sure.
we have equipment there, but it's a little more developmentally appropriate. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
laser, believe it or not, laser etcher there. We have some 3D printers. We have a little bit of a vinyl printer too. Everything is downsized. So the real, the best equipment we have is at the high school, which is not surprising. But yeah, no, but it's all expected the students will get some work. You can see that we even have some of the different levels of 3D printers right there in the back as well too. So they use that sometimes. Mr. Hancock is leading that initiative with the team. But
Are we looking at putting cabinets over here at all? Or what
I
are we
don't,
doing?
I don't know what we're gonna do. We gotta look at that too.
Kind of put you on the spot with that.
Yeah. You know what? I know somebody who can help with that with the design. So just think
I just think we need something a little bit more maybe about.
maybe we'll take a field trip over here too. How's
Yes.
that? When we do our walk.
We did come in here, but they had
Yeah, class in here.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did come in here, just so note, we did. We need to come in when the kids aren't here because they were all like, ooh, who's here?
Yeah. Well, and once you see what GIS looks like, it really does. It's eye popping. You know, how professional it is, and we can store things, which is nice.
Well, I want to be invited to see it. I won't stay for your meeting. I just want to see the cabinets.
Okay, pop over. Okay, so I think that's buildings, grounds, and safety. And then we had the two other meetings. We had finance, and again, the corrected date for the agenda is on August the 21st.
So on the finance, we met the 21st. We spent a good deal of time discussing the athletic fund, the revenues, the expenses, and current cash balances. And the revenues and expenses are projected on trend. We noticed that expenses are outpacing revenue. It is very likely then that the general fund will need to transfer money to the athletic fund by the end of the year. And although those expenses are outpacing revenues in the athletic fund, it is not an indication of careless spending. Instead, what we're noticing is the expenditures are really being driven up by inflation, especially with labor for officials. We're going to study both the revenue and the expenses and work collaboratively with our new athletic director, Mr. Gant, to determine what's a long-term solution here to provide financial stability within the athletic program financials. And to that end, we've already started down the path on a major project, which is to classify our expenses by sport. And we've already started that. Mr. Gant has really embraced the budgeting process. On occasion, it's not practical to break down every single sport, so there are a few expenses that we can't really classify by a sport because it's shared universally. But all in all, we'll be able to provide some good detail, later in the year. Any questions?
No.
That's great. So we're going to look for that. maybe November or December, any of the fall sports, and you could show us a report.
Yes, actually, that's what we talked about on Friday, that after the fall season, we could report. So, sure.
That is one of our objectives this year too, is to kind of land the plane on that whole topic of athletic budgeting and financing and all too. And Mr. Gant, I will second that with Mr. Shipman. Has done a great job. Mr. Hancock's been helping in middle school, but just really helping us look at all that. Anything else for finance? Policy met on August the 21st also, not the 15th. It's
Yep.
written there. And I think
Yes, policy committee met August 21st. We looked at 7 policies. Those 7 policies are on tonight's meeting agenda for a first reading. The policies we reviewed included student attendance, residency, administering medication at school, academic achievement, and personnel files. Our next policy committee meeting is to be determined still because of Alan and I's schedule, but we anticipate meeting in this month sometime.
questions? We did not have a local professional development committee, so there will not be a report. Their next meeting is coming up here later in the month. It's projected to be the 17th, so we'll have something the next board meeting. Ready for consent agenda?
Yep.
Okay. Consent agenda is 24-09-182.
Motion. Can I get a motion?
I'll motion. Second.
As a reminder, a few changes, just to highlight those again. So on page 6, and into page 7, it's that switch between supplemental employment and pupil activity.
Is this where we ask questions or do we have to go?
We already motioned. You can ask questions.
Yeah, that's a question.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. I did notice that we're approving some of the coaches or volunteer coaches, to correct myself, but volunteer coaches in mid-season. Did anybody else pick that up for fall?
It was in the, give me
Page 7. And our JV volleyball coach as well.
Yeah, that's a
We picked both of those up.
Yeah, good catch. We try to, if there's something delaying that, we'll let the board, but as we transition, that's an area of growth. Mr. Shipton, will you make sure, I know Mr. Kane had walk out, will you make sure that he knows we were talking about this again too? I think he understands the importance, but we want to make sure, Mr. Werman's helping with personnel as well, or HR. We want to make sure we have everyone approved beforehand, and there's a whole process with supplementals, people activity, and then also the background check process. So those two serve as a reminder, and we've done a very good job in previous years, but those two needed to be cleaned up, and no more of that for the futures.
Yeah, because we have 5 volunteer coaches. And we love having our volunteer coaches. I'm not complaining about that at all. Just the timing of it, that we're already mid-season. I think this is mid-season. We've already had practices since July.
Well, right, you're right. And what we want to make sure is everyone is clear to be able to work, volunteer. And sometimes I can tell you, because we're working through things like, yeah, they're cleared to work. We're just waiting for, like, I can see it in process from the state.
It is a long
But,
process.
well, but these two were opportunities for growth. I'd say that. So I appreciate the board calling that out, and we'll make sure to underscore that with Mr. Gant. Okay.
Thank you.
Can we just run through the rest
Yeah.
of the, okay. So resignation, that's straightforward. Extended days, Jody Graber. That was one that just got missed. Should have been on their August agenda, and we caught that after the fact. So there's nothing new there. It just
to
nothing
match Kendra.
additional. What's that?
To match Kendra.
Yes. Yes. Peer professional hours, some changes there just again to match needs. Sometimes we put employee transfers on the board agenda specifically if there's something in pay or assignment differences, could be some working conditions. So you can see 3 people mentioned listed there. Salary degree change. What the process there is that staff or teachers in this case have to show us that they have the transcripts to move from the master's, or it can be from bachelor's to master's, and that's master's 30. In this case, this is Julie Metalka moving to master's 30, and we did confirm all that with her transcripts. A couple classified employments you can see there. One is an April Thompson uh, we had actually, I know you accepted her resignation, but then she offered to help and work, a little bit through the month of August. So that's a case in point, kind of back to our coaching volunteer where you'll see, well, that's after that. This one I knew about. I think I may have told the board that. But that one I'll use my authority where I can to hire people in advance of board action because the board meetings don't always line up. Supplement employment, this is Alicia Doty for yearbook advisor. That one hasn't been used in years, but because of the change in assignments in the district, that's one we want to bring back. People activity employment, like I said, the only addition there, keep Andrew Rayburn, but then add Travis Hickens, so he goes into that section. Strong list of volunteers there. I won't read them all, but we certainly appreciate it, as Mrs. Thomas said. Substitutes, Mr. Cartwright's been able to get some substitutes for food service. We have board meeting minutes, so that'll be from August 14th and then August 26th. And we end with the financial reports. We're happy to answer any questions the board may have about any of those items in consent.
Any other questions?
We didn't include the September 4th work session.
I don't think they're ready yet, are they?
Oh,
We
okay.
I think we typically do those by the month.
By the month, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we can, but most of the time we try to wait until October just to, yeah.
It was just last week.
Sometimes, but
a
especially
good
work,
catch, just
work
in case.
sessions generate a lot of notes.
Call roll.
When you're ready. Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes. Treasurer, when you're ready. It takes a minute.
As a catch up with the voting. So.
The next resolution, 24-09-183, is to approve the 23-24 annual performance bonus for the superintendent. Would you like me to read the whole motion?
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Call roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes. Now, if you want something passed, this is the meeting to get it on the agenda.
Well, I just want to thank Dr. Wagner as well. I just want to thank Dr. Wagner as well because it has been a huge commitment to the district that he's made and great strides to get K through 12 together on curriculum. It's good. Everybody, all the moving parts and pieces that you see behind the scenes is amazing. It's easy to say, to write it out here, that, oh, this is what we're going to do. But it's him gathering the staff and talking to them in each building. So for that, thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And I think I want to make it really clear that I think also we've set goals as a team, and I think you've far succeeded quite a few of them. So we appreciate your work.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess I'll tell you this, this happens as a team. I mean, it's board sets the conditions for us to be successful. We have a great team to work with as well, through teachers, custodial staff. Everybody's pulling on the same end of the rope. So there's a lot of excitement here, and I think it's our obligation to move forward, but I do appreciate it.
Treasurer, call the roll.
I think you do. Yeah, we can
I just
comment.
didn't write it down, so
comments
it's
came
not
up.
After the roll, I apologize.
Yeah.
should have any comments.
Yeah.
So back to voting.
Okay.
Usually Tim's here and makes our comments for us, and so then, because we've told him ahead of time some of the comments, and he
Got it.
speaks for us.
So resolution
I just-
Resolution 24-09-184 is Eagle Wings Academy Purchase Agreement.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion. Second.
As a reminder, this is, we'll talk a lot about, but these are for specific needs we can't address in the school district, so we don't put a lot of detail there.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Resolution 24-09-185 is Licking Regional Educational Service Center General Services Contract, and this is an amendment.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion. I'll second.
The board already approved this agreement, and then we have some amendments to it. There are some aspects within the contract that provide services for students beyond that previous resolution, and we have some adjustments we have to make there. I do want to thank Mrs. Grace Wagner and Mrs. Drummy because they spent a lot of time. Mrs. Seibel's been helping too, but a lot of time just making sure that everything is reconciled. And it's a bit of a moving process because we're still working from last year, and there's reconciliation that has to occur, and then we're obviously into the new school year. So this is one that we work on a lot behind the scenes.
Treasurer call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 24-09-186 is approval of bus routes.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion. Second.
I believe the board has seen these, but we'll make sure that everything is as it should be, and there might be some modifications to these routes as well too. Also, I want to tell you, we don't put it on here, but one of the things we do as a school district is we're looking for our group stops, and we want to look for people identified in registries, so any sexual offenders, predators, and we actually, not a pleasant topic, but one that we take very seriously. So we look to see where group stops are, and there's some procedures about that, how close or far away, depending on who's registered in the database. So, that's just implicit in this process. I want to highlight that.
I know we're just voting on bus routes, and our last board meeting was the first day of school, right?
Yes.
But I will just say, Mr. Busenberg, thank you so much for the work you've been doing. I see heads nodding vigorously up front as well. Thank you so much for the work you've been doing. I've heard very little concerns about transportation, but also just as a parent myself this year, I'm appreciating the app. I use it every day. Like, it's close to our house, you better get outside. But the communication on there has been it's really wonderful to get on there, to know where the bus is. And I just think it's so convenient. I love it.
Maybe we could have a demonstration.
Yeah, you can see it.
Or demonstration. Now that I know how to speak.
But
You
again,
know what?
today, just
But
a
is it
quick
work like
alert went out.
1960 basically, where you can see someone.
You can see it moving along the route, and then very quickly I got just a quick, hey, we're 5 minutes behind, which isn't a huge deal in the route, but I just loved the heads up.
It might be important in snow if it's snow.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about is at the October board meeting is having a presentation for transportation. If the board would like that, we talked about that as a possibility.
I
Okay.
like that, especially with
Yeah.
the new app. I haven't seen it, but I did
Yeah.
hear a lot of positives about
Probably,
it. That's good.
Yeah, just kind of zoom out. We can look at transportation in general, be one of our presentations. I do want to second, though, what you said about Mr. Busenberg, because I tasked him with that last year. Obviously, we had some challenges last year, and I thought, okay, we had needed a performance improvement there, and he's led that. And Mr. McDonald's over there too. Mr. McDonald also helps with some of the communications. He's behind the speaker, I can see. But he also helps sometimes with the communication. He's proofing things too. It's an interesting relationship because it's a vendor contract, but then, people here at Johnstown-Monroe, so.
We expect the announcements.
Yeah.
from Johnson.
Yeah, so it's a little bit unique. Whenever you vertically integrate two organizations, it's a little challenging at times.
But I
it's
will say,
been working.
I have seen since Mr. Busenberg started, kind of directly, where I've seen a big increase in just how things are flowing and the communication and just the overall
Yeah.
expectations of, I think they're meeting our expectations.
Yep. So we'll do that in October. We'll have CBS, Community Bus Services, has also stepped it up in addition to Mr. Busenberg's guidance there.
All right, we can take the call roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Next resolution is 24-09-187. Is the Children's Conservation League of Johnstown, and it's a facility fee waiver approval.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Does the board want a summary of this at all, or?
I
Based on what
did see
request.
the form they filled out, the request. Is that open to our community I'm not super familiar with the Children's Conservation League, so is that something that,
Gail, do you
Our
want to give a
community
little
children are
bit?
invited
Do you
to?
mind going up to the mic? So Gail's here to represent
Great.
that, and she can
Wonderful.
answer some questions. She's sent us a good summary, and then Mr. Wehrman also
Wonderful.
prepared that. We also
Okay.
have an assistant.
You won't see me behind the screen. I'll stand off to the side here. The Children's Conservation League in Johnstown is the organization that sponsors the Santa House, the Christmas parade, the cookie walk. We give scholarships to a senior from Johnstown, a senior from Northridge. We support the JYAA. Almost anything that's youth or children involved in Johnstown or the Northridge area, we try to support or request that come to us. One of our events is a Halloween party, which we used to have at what used to be the old Catholic church,
Mhm.
which has now been taken over by another congregation, and we no longer have use for that for our Halloween party and our parade. So we were looking for another venue that wouldn't cost us any money, but give us enough space to have the Halloween costume contest and the party afterwards. And our request was to use JIS. So that's the fee waiver is for that. And I've already talked to the principal there and about the facility use. I think he's okay with everything we want to do. Are you, Brad? We did
Yeah,
an
he
email.
actually sent us a summary and all too, so the board's seen that, so they're all aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any other questions?
Any questions from this?
No, I appreciate you giving us a little background on the Children's Conservation League. You do a lot of wonderful things in the community and stuff that my family enjoys and lots of family enjoys. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, we really try to make ourselves known out there. We know everybody knows these things go on, but they don't really know who's behind
They
them
don't
all. So I'm happy to
We're
let
giving you the
you all
credit.
know that tonight anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Vote.
Yeah. Call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 24-09-188 is employment of treasurer.
And can I get a motion?
I'll motion. Second.
Questions, comments, concerns? Sorry. I was thinking. Questions, comments, concerns? Nope. No, I
Can I just say that Mrs. Boer predicted this? I mean, she said,
It's fine.
I shouldn't say this, but get her in the door, it'll be okay.
That's why I was kind of feeling
I'm going to say it. I guess I'm going to say
I'm
it.
so
She
used
said,
to
"I'm
just
So
just
she
sitting
came
here.
in.
Just
Miss-
say she stayed.
Yeah.
Just wanted to do it a little bit.
Yeah.
Found somebody, but
Remember what
you
I
love
said?
us so much. We
Yeah.
love you. So
I said at opening day, it was, interim, but then that Johnstown magic washes over you, right? And then pretty soon, becomes more
Oh,
long-term. But Mrs. Boer said, just get her in the door. It'll be okay. Right? See what happens. So I give credit where credit's due.
Well, I appreciate you wanting to stay, and I will just say as a board member, I think we've spent some time during work sessions to really dive into some of the finance stuff that is really just a lot of details, and I think I've grown to understand more deeply more this year than I have in the last 4 years combined. So I just really appreciate the way you dissect stuff and make charts and graphs and just help us to understand all of it.
And I appreciate what she does with investments. It's just a new phase of something to share that I have not seen in the past. It's just great.
All right.
She's
I'm
been a good
thrilled to be
professional
here.
partner. So go ahead, sir.
All right. You can call the roll.
Mrs. Thomas?
yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes,
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 29-09-189 is first reading of revised policies.
And I get a motion.
so moved.
Easy. Let's take her back.
I was wondering we were going to flip flop that. And a second. No questions? All right.
Not on those.
Okay. Those were pretty straightforward. All right. You can call the roll.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 24-09-190, first reading to rescind policies.
And a motion.
so moved.
Second.
Yes. I'll second.
And just clarification, rescinding does not mean we are removing those and no longer have them. Once we have policies that are more than 1 or 2 updates behind, we rescind the previous ones and just start fresh with new. And you can call the roll.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 24-09-191 is first reading of replacement policies.
Motion.
motion.
I'll
Second.
second.
All right. Call the roll.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes,
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 24-09-192 is a business advisory council. And I'll tell you, no actions required by the board. This is one of these things, like, remember we had to do a personnel hearing for retiree employment at one point. This is kind of similar. You just have to call it out on the board agenda. To give you some background, every public school district is required by law to participate in a business advisory or to form your own. We participate with the Lake King Regional Educational Service Center. In fact, I have a meeting about it tomorrow morning, and there's monthly meetings that are set up. So again, no action required by the board. Just have to make sure we have a resolution and that it's acknowledged. So. Then we move on to board comments.
Any board comments?
Did we do the motion on that?
He said
There's
no
there's no,
action.
There's
mo-
no action.
no
Okay.
motion. It
motion.
gets a resolution number so we can identify it, but it's one of those odd ones. It's kind of like sometimes like when we did the hearing for reemployment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it productive? That's kind of question.
Yeah.
I remember when we formed it and I remember how the participation was to take place, but I've never heard of recap that says, can't wait to get there. We're studying this, or this is going to be great.
I think honestly it's more reflective of the community. Well, it's more the county and the community. I think that in many cases, sometimes we have minimum standards we want to meet. I think what you see through our partnerships is we've had some very involved business relations with Facebook, Meta, Intel, most recently with Huntington Bank. So we're going to do more than what's required. I think those partnerships, those three I can think of, really donate time, money, talents to some of their corporate staff to work with us. I think that's an add-on or a value added that we're exploring.
Anything else?
I'm going to steal your thunder.
Okay.
You can talk about it later.
Okay.
In your comments.
I'm checking my list. Go ahead.
I know he always gets upset when I say these things. I just want to say thank you to the entire community and the staff and the students for the K-12 PTO walkathon on Friday. I did not attend it. Craig sent out YouTubes and pictures and updates on that. And for me, that was great because I wasn't able to attend. But it was amazing to see everybody come together. And we had everybody out here, and they were all different age groups working together, and they were doing the walkathon. But there were fun activities too. And it was just good to see everybody come together for that. And I appreciate that. I know that's a huge day for you guys as administrators to let everybody get together out there and to juggle all the schedules and for the staff members. But I hope you guys had a fun day too. So.
I was going to echo. I know for the PTO and the volunteers, they are there very well. They're there the night before setting
They're-
up, and then
right.
they're there very early in the morning. And it's a lot of planning and scheduling and organizing, making sure big kids aren't on the track at the same time as the little kids. And I'm sure behind the scenes, there's so much more involved than we would ever know, and it's really appreciated.
Well, I know our maintenance department was out there Thursday night, Thursday day. They were dedicating a person there throughout the day. That they were setting up. You have the next morning around their early setting up. So it's very much appreciated.
If there's nothing else, I'll move to superintendent comments. Okay. Start of the school year. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but just really pleased with, we talked about transportation already, but just really pleased how well everything is going this year. Obviously, filling positions at any business, any organization is difficult, but we really do have a strong team here, a strong community, strong staff. Someone asked me about it recently, and I was just kind of free flowing, but I feel like we're months into the school year in a good way. Like it looks that good. And I think when we did our walk around, you got to, I think that was the first week of school. We were looking at facilities and all, but you got to see some of the students. And
It was
Yeah.
the first week of school.
yeah, it's a great place to be. So
Everybody was happy.
Yeah.
We saw them coming in from the bus.
Yeah.
They were very happy.
So really do appreciate everyone's efforts there, because in a good way, like I said, it feels like we're further along. Building projects, I know we've worked on this a bit, we'll continue, but just wanted to kind of level set where we are. So we have the 4 building projects right now. So the high school addition, the 6th classroom addition, is moving forward, and that'll be our first project. We had things separated into phases. So our first phase was supposed to be the addition to the high school and then the board office. We're reworking that, especially from our last board work session. And there might be a phase 1.5, or maybe, an early 2. And what we're doing there is we're looking also at that auxiliary, space, kind of like an auxiliary gym or multi-purpose area, looking at that. So that should be accelerated. I think there's some economies we talked about if we're moving earth moving, board off at the same time. And then obviously we're looking at the Performing Arts Center as well too, whether that's a physical change to the exterior of the building or an interior exterior, or if it's just a reconfiguration of how the seating is. Our goal on that is to try and get us to 700 seats in that building if possible. And that's because our entire growth model is built on class sizes of about 350. So that would take, that's what schools do a lot of times, to have an auditorium space or performing arts space. It's about double, or except 2 classes when it's built out. So all those are coming together. I'll keep the board updated, but since we met last week, there's just a few updates. But that again is, I think we can accelerate that multi-purpose project and maybe reshift the phases. The first one again will be the building addition because that one's so far down the path. Good. Okay. District report card. I kind of highlighted this or mentioned this a little bit, but by October we'll get curriculum committee together, and we will also have a public presentation. I can tell you that we've seen the I don't want to say it's raw, but we've seen the draft. It's still waiting for reconciliation, but we can see the back end of it, and it looks like our report card's about the same as it was last year. I was a little concerned about math. Typically, when you come in and you bring, we've got a brand new curriculum in. We've done a lot with teaching and learning. Sometimes you see an implementation dip. I will tell you that, and this is just anecdotal till all the information comes in, but we'll share this with the board. Math, one of our strongest areas of improvement. So, and obviously what we're focusing on is making a difference. But our work is cut out for us. We had an administrative meeting again today, and we're looking at ways that we can continue to improve all areas. And so that'll be a focus. So more to come there. But again, I'm pleased that we didn't have an implementation dip, and our path forward is clear. PTO walkathon I did have on my comments, but I will add a little commentary because I got this morning. So K-12 was supposed to bring in more people, and as of early this morning, they've raised, I believe, more money than they ever have. So just shy of $30,000, $29,661,000, and more pledges are outstanding. So I think they had told me that the highest they'd ever had was about 26. So we averaged 26,000. So. And I want to second what Mrs. Thomas said, just across the board. The PTO, when we actually approached them and said, let's think about a K-12, I could barely get, after we talked about it, I barely could get the concept out of my mouth. And they were, yes, yes, yes. And they've done an outstanding job. We get to see some of the work. Administrative team has been super helpful. I will tell you, I was telling Mrs. Thomas this, it's kind of fun because we went out there for a little bit, Mr. Donald and I, and kids are kids. You go out there and it's these high school kids, and like, I'm cool, walk out there like, oh, there's inflatables, and and they had the bubble machine, and a couple of kids came up to us, high school kids like, I'm all wet, and I'm thinking, well, why did you douse yourself in the bubbles? But it was okay. But just a nice community atmosphere. I think, for some of our new administrators, they get to see a little bit of what that Johnstown magic is, and it's exciting. It really is. It's just good for all involved. So, want to remind you, and I sent a calendar invite out our next board meeting was scheduled for the 23rd of September. We're going to move that to the 26th, so that'll be from a Monday to Thursday. I believe all of you are okay with that. And again, I sent you the notice. That'll be a work session as well too. So, but other than that, that's the change. Want to highlight the Big Red Band Fall Fanfare, if I can read a little bit here, because obviously we're very proud of our Big Red Band. So this fall fanfare will be on September 14th. It'll be at our stadium. The gates open at 5:30. Parade of bands begins at 6:30, and the festival begins at 7. We have 8 local high school bands, including 4 from Licking County. So obviously we're there at Granville, Northridge, and Lakewood. We actually have a special guest, the University of Dayton marching band. So that was all coordinated by our Mr. and Mrs. Zarelli. General admission is $10 and $6 for students age 6 and up. And then there is sponsorship in this, as Mary E. Babcock Foundation helps sponsor, especially for that University of Dayton band, because they don't have a budget that accommodates that. So, and I know our athletic boosters really help with that as well too, to get that all coordinated. So I want to highlight that. my last thing under miscellaneous is water and sewer obviously is dictating some aspects of how we will grow. I know that Mrs. Boer and I attended a meeting at in New Albany. We ran into some representatives from Southwest Licking Water and Sewer, Community Water and Sewer District, and I got a response today about scheduling a meeting. So Mrs. Boer and Mr. Swagger now will be working on that. I'll reach out to them and then we'll give an update. But the idea there is looking at how water and sewer could impact, especially in Jersey Township, our school district. As a reminder, we share Jersey Township with Northridge and the Licking Heights District. So any type of growth, and this is true for any parcel, anytime a parcel transfers, we want to know how it's used, for what purpose, and the impact on the community, including the schools. So I'll follow up with Mrs. Boer and Mr. Swagger on that. And I think that's it, unless there's questions for me.
I did forget to, when you were talking about the big red band, the fall fanfare, this past Saturday, Johnstown-Monroe, Northridge, Granville, they all went down to Ohio University to play with Montana.
Oh,
And they
that's
got
right.
a
Yeah.
field for that, but they
Yeah.
also did a little performance with a group session with Johnstown, Northridge, Granville, Olentangy, Berlin, and Danville high schools. And that one of the performances is out there online. They did an amazing job. It's nice to see all the bands collaborate and do a little session there like they would if they were in college. So very inspiring. And then they're going to turn that on band
Yeah.
fest this Saturday with some of those same.
Yeah. Excellent. If there's nothing else, I'll read the resolution for adjournment. Okay. Resolution 24-09-193 is adjournment.
Second.
I didn't even get it out.
I read your mind. I'm so
Call the roll.
surprised.
It was so fast, I missed who was first.
And
She was like,
Mrs. Thomas,
yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
yes. And meeting adjourns at 6:09.
Thank you.